Hello and welcome to Studio Secretz. I'm Secretz, aka Richie, and in this series of videos what I thought I'd do is I'd take you through all the tips and tricks that I use in the studio. So everything I use to make original tracks, remixes and bootlegs. Now in this first video what I thought I'd do is take you through how to create a bootleg, because I get a lot of emails asking me where I get my acapellas from, my instrumentals, and how I put a bootleg together. So what I thought I'd do is show you it in a video. Now, picking the right track to bootleg is essential. There's no good in picking your favourite track. That might not work with your style of music. You know, you're best off picking a track that will fit with your kind of music. Otherwise, if you're pushing a track that doesn't work, you could be there for hours in the studio and not get anywhere. So really think about your style and what kind of tracks would suit your kind of style best. That's not to say you can't pick something from the other end of the spectrum. You could pick something completely odd and it might work. So just be careful with that. Just, you know, pick the right track for your kind of music. Now what I'm going to do with this tutorial is I'm going to pick a track that I don't have an acapella for, that I don't have an instrumental for, I just have the original club mix of it. And what we're going to do is we're going to use Natural Born Grooves, Candy on the Dance Floor. And as I say, I've just got the original club mix of it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through loading it into Ableton, and then cutting it up and selecting the bits from it that we can use, so the bits that we'll be able to use in our bootleg that will work really well. So I'm going to load it into Ableton, warp it, cut it all up so we select all the bits we want. Then I'm going to take you through EQing each part of those so you can use them within our mix. Then we're going to layer some beats on top of that, and then we're also going to look at getting the melody out of the original track so we can use it in our bass line. So at the end of this, hopefully you'll have the whole basis for a bootleg. I'm not going to get into the arrangement of it just yet. I'm just going to show you how you can kind of get all the different parts out of an original track and use it for a bootleg. So we're going to head into Ableton now.
Right, so let's get started with this. Now I've opened up Ableton, and this is the usual kind of blank template that usually opens when you open Ableton. That's what we're going to start with. And I'm going to switch over to the arrangement view. I usually find this easier for when I'm starting off a bootleg, because I'm not kind of creating any ideas. I just want to chop up something that I'm going to be bootlegging. So we're going to get rid of most of these audio channels. I'll leave one audio channel there. I'm going to drop the track that we're going to be bootlegging into the timeline just there. Now I'll wait for that just to kind of, there we go, that was very quickly. It kind of just analysed that there, and it's done its own kind of warping on it. We'll go in and we'll have a look at that, make sure that that's all been warped right. No, it hasn't. Now we know it's a house track, so it's going to be on a 4/4 beat. We know that the BPM's probably not going to change much. So we know if we kind of start it from the start, it will be the same BPM throughout. Now this might change depending on what track you're bootlegging. If you're bootlegging an old track that's played live by instrumentalists, then you'll have to go in, you'll have to manually warp it and set it to a grid to be able to sample it. But we're going to start off with this this house track. So we know that this is going to stay the same tempo all the way through, hopefully. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to zoom into the first beat. I'm going to right click on it and set 111 here. Now I'll just set the start of the clip there. And then I'm also going to then right click on the same thing again and click warp from here straight, which will get rid of all the warp points, and it's basically just saying that it's going to be the same tempo throughout, starting there. So there we go. It's already kind of matched it as 12999. So we can safely say this is going to be 130 BPM. So I'm just going to go over this. If I zoom out, and then I'm just going to zoom in at a few different bits just to make sure that the beats are all kind of landing on the markers. I mean, if you're used to looking at waveforms, you kind of see when these are kind of off. That's obviously a kick drum, so that's kind of it's a big wave there. So we can see that we can just drag that onto the marker, onto the timeline. So we're kind of adjusting the time as we go. There we go. It's set to 130 now. I'm just going to make sure that if I zoom in and a few other bits on here, that it's all kind of lining up just nicely. It's not necessary because we're not going to be using the whole track to do this. We could just just make sure the bits that we're going to be using are in time. But just to make sure, we might be using any part of this, so I'm going to make sure it's all warped correctly. So yeah, so all of those are kind of nicely on beats. It's not moving anywhere along there, and it's at 130 BPM. So when you come to do your bootlegs, obviously you're going to be taking a track that's already been done, and you want to put your own style on it. Now, obviously depends, whatever your style is, you'll know what your kind of BPM is. I'm going to go for a nice kind of 125 here for like a nice tech house kind of speed. Now, bearing in mind that the original was 130, so we're dropping it 5 whole BPM. Now, depending on what track you're going to be using, I mean, you'll probably be doing a lot more than that. If you're taking a hip hop track and you're creating a hip house kind of version of it, then yeah, obviously it's going to be, you're going to be stretching it quite a bit. So you just have to play around with that and see what kind of settings are best for more advanced kind of longer stretches in time. Now, because I'm stretching by 125, I'm going to have to look at the algorithm that it uses for kind of time stretching. Now, what I tend to do is if I'm doing a bootleg, then I'm looking for bits. I'm looking for vocals, I'm looking for synths, I'm looking for bits that I can sample and then put my own drums and my own bass and maybe some of my own synth parts underneath. So I'm looking for clean bits without any beats. And usually when you're time stretching things without beats, then you're probably best to use something like the complex algorithm. That's usually a good all-rounder. But if you're doing, synths, or if you're doing vocals, and you might even find that tones works quite nicely, and I've been known to texture to work quite nicely as well. But it's just one of these things you just have to try out. And what I'll do is once I've kind of cut this all up, we'll try with different ones of these to see if they sound any better or any worse, and then decide which one's best for each part. But for now, I'm going to put it on complex, and that will give us a good all-rounder, and it performs really nicely. So there we go. So we've got our track now. It's been warped. It's it's a 125. We're all ready now to start getting in and finding the bits that we want to sample. Now, what I usually do is I'll create another track here. So I'll create another audio track. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut bits from the original track and move it down into this new audio track here. This is kind of like just a collection of bits that I'm going to use, just so I can kind of see quite easily which bits I'm going to sample. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of just go through the track and find bits in there that I find interesting, that are going to be easily sampleable, and that we might be able to use. Usually what I'm looking for is bits without beats, quiet parts within the track. And you can usually see that just by the waveform. If I zoom out, you can see quite easily that this is a dip here, this is a breakdown here. It might be a bit of a break there, or it might just be just a kick and a bass or something. And then you've got another break and a break, and you can easily see just by the waveform the kind of bits where it's going to have no beats, and those are going to be the best bits to sample. Especially, I mean, with this track, there's no a cappella for it, or I haven't found one anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get the most out of this track that I can do. So so I'm going to start skipping through this track and finding bits that I want to sample. Now I could have used that bit there, but I think there's just too much going on in it. I like the kind of top line. The top line's quite nice, so we might come back later and maybe recreate that. But there's a bit too much going on there. So you got a kick and a bass going on there. There's not any other kind of components there. And when you come to edit this out, you might be able to just drop some of the low end away, so that kind of gets rid of most of the kick, and all you're left with is the kind of upper harmonics of that kind of bass sound. So that might be useful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this bit out, and I'm going to just use the Apple E to just cut that. So I'm just going to do a cut either side of that bit that we want, and then I'm just going to drag it down to the layer below. And that's kind of, so I know I'm going to be using, I want to use this bit. I'm going to keep going through the track. So there's a lot of effects on that bit there, but I kind of like that vocal bit at the start. We might be able to use that a bit, I think. So I'm going to drag that down and continue going through the track. So that's pure vocal on its own. That's a gem, that. So we can definitely use something out of that. And there's a cymbal on the end there. Now you're probably going to want to use a kind of crash cymbal in your track anyway. So you might as well just use the original. The original's there just nicely on the end. So you should be able to use that in the track. I'm going to keep it anyway. So there we go, kind of got 4 bits out of the track there. We've got some nice kick and bass. Kind of got an effect kind of bass line going on there. We've got the vocals going on their own and a cymbal. I think I kind of want the synth as well. There's a synth in there. There's a synth on its own in there, and I'm going to take that down. And there's a kick here as well with this one, but it's just a kick with the synth, so it might be able to just filter the bottom end out and just be able to use that. So I think those are the bits that we're going to use from the track. Now it obviously depends on whatever track you're using, but you just try and find the characteristic kind of bits of the track, the bits that that people will recognize, because that's after all why you're creating the bootleg. You want things that people will latch on to. But then again, you want to kind of use the bits that you can easily put your own, your own beats under, your own bass under, so it can kind of make your style, but take samples. So you are kind of looking for the bits without any kind of beats under, and this track seems to have quite a few bits. So I'm going to get rid of this first track now. I mean, I could keep it there if I want to, refer to it a bit later or get something else out of it. But I think I've got everything out of it that I need to now, so I'm going to just delete that one. So I've deleted that one, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to set all these back to the start, and I'm actually going to create a track for each one of these, because we want to treat each one of these differently. So I'm just going to drag each one of these onto a different track. Right, so we've got them on there. Now I'm just going to go through each one of these, kind of naming them up and putting some basic kind of EQ on there, getting rid of the stuff that we don't need straight off, and that will help us no end. So there's quite a lot of bass happening there. Obviously, it's just a kick and a bass, but luckily, because that kind of that bass kind of sound is very synth-like. There's a lot of stuff in the upper range. If we cut some of the bottom, then hopefully we might be able to use that on its own. I don't know yet, but we'll just see how that goes. So we got kind of most of the kick away there, and if you put your own kick underneath it there, you wouldn't even notice the original one. So we've got the kind of the melody of the original, but without obviously any of the bottom end, and we can kind of replace the bottom end with our own bottom end. So I'm going to rename that kick bass, because that's the sample name for that one, and then I'm going to solo this next one. See, there's almost two samples in there. We've got like the starting bit without any kind of kick, and we've got this kick here. Now, usually, obviously, we want to get rid of the kick, but that actually might kind of add a bit of atmosphere to it with that kind of really kind of wooden kick, the kick without any kind of bottom end. A bit how if you're obviously DJ mixing and you kind of drop out the bass, you kind of have the kick going in the background there, very, just the top end of the kick, and it keeps things going. I think we might be able to use that, so I'm going to split that into two different clips. I'll drag this one off to the side because that we might use a bit later. And what I'll do is I'll get into this clip, and because we want to loop it, I'm just going to this is the whole track. This is the original track that obviously we've sampled, and this bit here is the actual bit that we got in this clip. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this loop region over, zoom in, and then just create a loop out of this. So making sure that's looped and the loop is checked, and now I can just use that as a loop. So this one's kind of not destructive. I've not cut it away from the original at all. So if I wanted to kind of go back and edit it and make it a different length or whatever, if I want to take a different bit, I could easily just move that loop region and do something different with it. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep it as we did. So there we go. We kind of got the synths there. That's going to hopefully be useful to us. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to because it's very flat at the moment. Probably a bit later, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some reverb on it, a bit of ping pong delay, just to kind of push it out and make it a bit wider than it is. It's all kind of older tracks are not they didn't use so much kind of a stereo field for older tracks, so they're not kind of pushed out as much as today's tracks are. Today's tracks are really very wide, very loud. This is we're probably going to need to kind of stereo widen it a bit. And the ping pong delay is really good for that. So there we go, we got our synth there. Next we're going to move on to this layer, which is kind of vocal and a bit of effects going on there. Now we've got two layers that are very similar. So we got this one and this one. So they're very similar, but there's this really kind of nice vocal effect at the start that I've picked up on straight away. And I think we could probably use that quite nicely. So again, what I'm going to do is drop an EQ on it, cut out the bottom end. Now it's just basically a riser going through there, and that's something we can easily put in on our own. So I'm not going to bother with that too much. I just want this vocal bit at the start. So it kind of, the vocal goes all the way up to there. So I'm just gonna chop that there and just get rid of that because we just want this vocal bit here. In fact, it seems to just be delaying here, so I think we can get rid of that as well. So we got the kind of start of the vocal there. Now it's obviously chopping off quite strongly there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the fades, the inbuilt fades within Ableton, which are accessed through here, just to kind of fade off that bottom, that bit just there, just so it kind of fades out nicely. So we got that there. That's fading out quite nicely, but obviously it's still stopping. And what we're going to do is we're going to put some reverb on that, and we'll also put again a ping pong delay on that. Let's see, we'll do the dry down of the ping pong delay first, and just put some reverb on it. See how that goes. So we got it kind of lasting a bit longer there. This doesn't sound great on its own, but it might sound better in the mix, and we'll just see that as we go along. Yes, that sounds pretty good, and we'll have a look at that in the mix when we go later. So I'm going to put effects vocal on that, and we're going to try the next. This is going to be the bit that we're going to use most. Now, there's two things about this, is that obviously it starts off here with an effect. In fact, there's effects going on in this the first part of it. You can see it from here. There's kind of it's split up into kind of the melody, and the first part of it is just full of effects, so we can't really use all that. It's it'd be very difficult to loop it, and also we're bringing loads of the original track into it. And what we want, we just want that kind of bassy kind of vocal kind of sound. So we're going to be using this bit here, I think, the second part. So we kind of want to loop this bit here. So I'm going to bring that over to the start. Now, one other thing about this is we've got a kind of clap here on the end, or a percussion sound. And we don't kind of want that. That's going to kind of get in with our mix and probably mess with our drums. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into this clip again. And there we go. We can see that the region, that's kind of what we've selected there. That's what's in the clip. And again, I'm going to move the loop region over to there. And I'll just loop it up there. So now we got our loop, and I can just drag it out like that, and we can use it again and again. As I say, that kind of percussion sounds in at the end there. But now, because we've got a loop going, all we need to do is shift the loop. So we've got the start of the loop here by that little triangle, and the end of the loop there with that triangle. And what we can do is we can just use the loop region just to move it back again. So this here is the percussion sound, and what we're doing, we're just kind of moving the loop back. The loop's still going to start here. But instead of having this percussion sound here, it's going to loop back to the end of the other bar. So we're kind of going to get rid of that percussion sound. So let's hear what this sounds. So we got a tiny bit of effects in there, but really once we've kind of layered it up and put some EQ on it, we're not going to hear this at all. So I'm just going to roll the bottom end off. We don't want to roll too much of the bottom end off, because this is going to really serve to be a big part of the track. I can already feel this is the cleanest loop that we've got, and it's very characteristical of the original. So I'm not going to cut too much of the bottom end off, because I kind of want to use that as a bass. So that's sounding really nice. So I'll put that as a main vocal. And then we just got to work on the cymbal, which is really simple. All we need to do for that cymbal is just EQ it. Just take some of the bottom end out, the bottom end that we're not going to be using. And we've already got the reverb that they've already added to it anyway, so that's going to be perfect. I mean, we could go in and we could put some delay on it and make it a bit more of our own. But to be honest, I mean, it's got the characteristics of the original, so we don't really need to get into that. So there we go. We've got all of our kind of main bits there that we're going to be sampling. I'm just going to reduce the volume of these bits so they're not all playing at the same volume. Mainly because obviously what we're doing is we're making our own bootleg. So we'll have all our own. When you make your own track, you have all your own bits. And then after that, you master it. So you put your loudness plugin in on it, your maximizer, and your all your various kind of your mastering kind of plugins. But because we're creating a bootleg, we're using somebody else's track that's already mastered. So this track has already had its loudness put on it. So we're gonna have to take it down in volume a fair bit, and that's why we're EQing it and lowering it in volume so it will fit in with our mix. So I've lowered these volumes just to give us some headroom. And I'm just gonna play all these back, just see how they sound all together. Now I'm not sure I'm going to use this kick bass. Actually, I'm not that keen on it at the moment. I think we've got all the bits that we need from this, so I'll keep that kick bass there just for the time being. But I don't think we're going to need it. Now the synth, obviously, we can have some fun with the synth. We could put some, we could put an auto filter on it. Actually, we could just kind of filter some of it out. So I'll show you what we could do with that. So you can already hear kind of what we're doing here. We're already kind of playing around with ideas of what we could do throughout the track, and putting that auto filter on obviously is just kind of whereas in the original track they'd have been playing that out using a synth, so they'd probably have a cutoff on their synth that would allow them to do something very similar. And what we're doing is a kind of a retro way. We're taking the raw sample from their original track and doing a very similar thing. We're just, because this is already this is from the break, so this is when the synths, the cutoff is full all the way up, so it's giving out all the sound of the synth. And what we can do is we can now just kind of take it back to how it is in the start of the track, where it's very low. So we've got all the bits that we now need, I reckon, for the track, for us to start remixing it. So what I'm going to do now is jump in and get some samples, because I think we've got everything we need here to start getting going. So what I usually do is jump in and start getting some drum samples in. I like to get kind of a beat going behind it so you can get a feel for it, because this is where you're starting to put your own kind of feel on that track, on the bootleg. So you're going to be going to your own samples that that you use all the time, ones that are your kind of sound. You may even want to be kind of creating like drum beats from scratch, so you're using your individual drum hits to kind of program it, or you might be using something like Machine or something like that to program your drum beats. That's totally up to you. This is not a tutorial on how to make my sound or how to make tech house. This is just kind of showing you how to create a bootleg and put your sound on it. So I'm just going to pick some drums here, just roughly, just trying to get a good sound. Obviously I'd probably spend a bit more time on this if I was just doing this straight off, but I kind of want to get this screencast done for you, so you get the idea of how I go about making bootlegs, and how you can kind of use bits from other people's tracks and samples very creatively to kind of create your own sound. So yeah, I use a lot of loops within my tracks, but what I do is I don't just kind of plonk them in there. Sometimes I do. Sometimes they just work straight off the bat, but that's not always the case. Usually what I do is I'll get in there and I'll just use bits from a loop. So I'm just going to audition some of these along with the track. Now we're just going to change the quantize up to 1 bar so that it plays in time. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play back these samples here and just kind of add some loops as I go and see how that sounds. Incidentally, if you come from a Logic background or anything else like that, auditioning loops like this was a pain to do before, but I do love the way that Ableton allows you just to preview them in real time. I'd say take full advantage of that and just spend some time just seeing what kind of clicks. You might just hear a tom sound or a hi-hat or something in a loop that sounds just right. Just get it in there and just cut it up. So that's what I'm going to get going. So I kind of like the hi-hat and the clap in this, actually. Take that up in volume. Now I'm literally just going to get in and really cut this up. So I know that that is a snare there, and I know that's the hi-hat. So those are the bits I'm going to use. I don't like any of the rest of the samples in this, but the snare and the hi-hat seem to be really quite nice. So I'm just going to use that. Copy that across. And just duplicate this across what we've got at the moment. I'll say a big thanks to to one of my friends who I was in the studio with the other day. Kind of let me know onto the idea of duplicating. For so long I've been selecting an area, holding down Alt and then dragging and clicking, and that's what I've been doing for ages, or copy and pasting. But Apple and D is brilliant, so I thank him very much for that. So we got a really nice kind of old school kind of hat and clap going on there. I'm going to put something else in there, probably fill it up with some nice loops. Going to delve into Sample Magic. Sample Magic do some fantastic loops. Their sample packs are really, really, really good. I'm going to jump into this tool room pack, I think. Let's see what we can add from here. See, there's a tom in there that I quite like. I quite like the sound of the tom in there. It's that tom there. Let's say, I mean, you could just, I mean, obviously these are just individual sounds that I'm picking out, but you could just easily just, put these in as one shot if you find them. I just find this is the easiest way because they're already kind of, they're in a pattern and you can easily audition them as part of that pattern. So I like that. I'm just going to duplicate that across again. We'll go back and EQ these in a bit. I just want to, it's important to kind of, while you're still feeling inspirational, still feeling creative, it's just to get stuff in and seeing how they sound. We'll EQ them and volume them later. Right, let's have a look in this. I tend to look for a lot of kind of top loops first. That's just the kind of that's just usually what I look for, because we're talking about kind of the hi-hats, the kind of the shuffly elements, anything without kind of the kicks and stuff, because we'll put the kicks on a bit later. If you're anything like me, you'll have a folder full of kicks that you use all the time, and they're brilliant for the job. So. I really like that shaker. It kind of moves on quite nicely. I don't think that's kind of, it's not sitting quite well though. It's on a different kind of it's a different kind of shuffle pattern, so I might have to make that a bit more strict. Now obviously if you're if you've got a very kind of straight kind of house track and you're introducing a kind of a very shuffly beat that's out of time, then you can easily just get in and just start tweaking it via the points here, and that's what I'll do with this now. there we go. I've just basically made the drums a bit a bit stricter, so they kind of fit in with the other drums that we've got going on. So again, I'm going to EQ that out in a bit because obviously there's quite a bit of bottom end to that loop that we're probably not going to want. Let's add a bit more. I think a bit more drums need to go in. Add another layer. So that kind of fits in quite nicely. I'm probably not going to chop that up much, actually. I think that sounds all right. So now I'm going to... actually, no, we need to get a kick in there, don't we, of course. I'm going to use one of the kicks from here, I think. Use one of my favourite ones from there. Now, I could just drop this kick straight in there and just duplicate it across. But what I do a lot recently is using the simpler. I can't really describe why I do it so much. It seems to be simpler. That's a bit of a pun that I didn't kind of plan on. But yeah, it's if you want to be able to tweak the drum a bit later, say replace the kick drum, you're not happy with it, then it's a very quick way to be able to just replace that kick drum. And that's usually, you know, if you're putting in your kick drum to start with to kind of get your beats going, and then you bring in a bass and it doesn't kind of go with the kick or whatever, or you know, then you want to swap out the kick, you can easily with a simpler. So again, I'm just going to set this up. So I'll have I'll drop that drum in that I just found, and then create a MIDI clip. Okay, a MIDI clip across here. Quickly draw these kick drums in. Now we're already getting quite high in the mix, so I'm going to lower all of these. Bass on that kick, so I'm just going to trim that a little bit out of the way. Now I'm just going to select all of these tracks and just lower the volumes of them all together, just so it's not peaking down here. Now obviously we're using somebody's already mastered track, as I explained earlier, and then we're putting our own elements on it. So what we need to do is we need to kind of bring them together. And one of the best plugins for that is the Glue plugin. Now, Glue comes as part of the plugins within Ableton. You can easily just apply it via there. I started using the Glue plugin, you know, ages ago, years ago. and I've got it as individual VST as an audio unit. So I've been using that for time. So I've got the settings that I use in here, and you know, this is a fantastic plugin. It really brings everything together. It just kind of puts this, as it says, it's just this kind of glue that kind of glues all the parts together and kind of makes them sound as whole. And this is brilliant for bootlegs. If you're, you know, if you want to kind of merge your bits with the original kind of track, this is a, you know, a great plugin for it. And you know, I'm a big fan of presets. I'll easily go on the record and say that I go straight in and use the mastering glue preset from within here. And this, for the most part, kind of does everything we need it to do it. What I'll do is I'll preview it to it before. It's a very, very subtle difference, but it really does the trick. It really really brings things together quite nicely, and it's one of the first things that I always put on my audio chain. So now I'm going to just get EQ some of these loops now, just get the, you know, the bottom ends out of it. It's a very quiet loop, this one, but you can really hear that there's some kind of bottom end on there. Or if if you can't hear that on this video, but you can definitely see it on here. I'm not interested in that. And that's just filling up the bottom end, which we don't need. Again, on this, we just want the shaker, so we're just going to cut the bottom end out. Again, cutting the bottom end out. Now we don't want to cut too much bottom end out, because obviously we kind of, it's a kind of very kind of bassy kind of drum sound, and that's what the characteristics of it are. But we just want to kind of cut it away enough so we've got room for our kind of kick and our bass to hit through. And also, because this is a kind of very cut up kind of sound, what I'll do is I'll put a small amount of reverb on it as well, just to kind of just to make it fit in with the mix a bit better. So there you go. It kind of makes it sound a little bit less dry. It's still got that kind of punch, but it it comes through a bit better there. There you go, cutting the bottom end of that off. There isn't much bottom end on there, but there is just, if we can get rid of it, then it just frees up more of the bottom end for everything else. So I think we got most of the elements there, so we'll see how that sounds. So that's sounding pretty good so far. Now, what we're going to do, we need to, we're going to look at the bass now, I think. So we're going to want to get the notes from the original. Now this can be a very tricky part. A very tricky part of the process to try and get the notes out of the original. So say you want to kind of get a bass line that's very much similar to the original, you know, using the same kind of notation, the same chords or whatever. This can be very tricky, but there's several different ways we can do this. The first way is to be able to use Ableton's inbuilt kind of in Ableton 9. You are now able to drag and drop an audio clip onto a MIDI channel, and it'll get the notes for you. It's not perfect, but it sometimes gives you a good idea of kind of what's going on, and hopefully give you some kind of idea as to what notes to use. The second method is just doing it by ear. And this can be a very long process. If you're trying to come up with chords, then it can take quite a while to kind of really kind of get them through. Unless you've got a really good ear, unless you're classically trained and you can hear chords, then it can be quite tricky, and it is a painstaking process. But it's just one of those things, because you're often not going to get the original MIDI parts or anything else like that. Then you're going to struggle to try and get the same notation you had before. Sometimes you can, if if it's a popular track, then you can search the internet and find a MIDI file for that track. But if you're trying to go for an odd track, an old dance track that that never was kind of commercial, or something like something that's really out in the left field, then you're going to struggle to find a MIDI part for it, and that's where this kind of comes in handy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop Massive in there. I think I use Massive quite a bit. I've got some really nice kind of bass patches in there that I use. For now, I'm not going to load any patch on here. So at the moment, it's just got the standard kind of sound. So it's a really kind of standard basic sound going on there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that for the time being, because we want to kind of hear what this WAV is going to give us, what this detection algorithm is going to give us. So we've got all our parts here. We've got the vocal part here that we could use, and then we've got our synth part. Now I think the synth part might actually give us a better read as to what the original notes were, because it's mostly just chords. So if I play that back, get rid of the auto filter for now, and play that back. So in there we've got it's great. You've got the chords of the synth. We've got a bit of bass going on in there. We've got some other kind of effects and vocals and stuff which might mess it up a little. But I think hopefully we should be able to get something out of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that. I'm going to Alt click and drag it down to the massive channel. And as you see, the little cursor has changed to a little melody kind of icon. If I let go of that now, it'll ask me how I want to convert the audio to MIDI. Now, if we were kind of just tracing a kind of bass line, then we probably just want to do a melody, because bass lines are usually just single notes. So we'd probably just do that. But as this synth is a chord, we're going to put it on harmony. Now you could try both methods. There's not to say that you can't do either for either. But yeah, I mean, you want to try and keep them to what the kind of content is that you're kind of sampling. And as we know from the synth, it is kind of chords, and it's quite easy to hear that it is chords. So I'm going to try harmony and see what that gives us. Now this can take any amount of time depending on the size of your sample and how complex it is. But as you can see, we've come back with a whole host of notes here. Now we've got no idea whether these are going to be any good at all. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to play it back and see how it sounds. So that channel. So it sounds a bit of a mess, especially the first part. I think the first part is being put off by the effects that are on there, and certainly by the vocal that was probably in there as well. So it's probably this last part that we're going to be able to get. So I am going to straight away just take away that first bit, because we don't need that first bit. We're just going to concentrate on this last bit. So as we can see at the bottom here, the best bit of trying to figure out which bits we can use is using the kind of bottom notes, because these are usually the root notes. These are usually the notes that have been played by the bass sound, and the bass sound, as I said before, is usually just a single notes rather than chords, and that usually gives us an idea of what the kind of bass note of the actual melody is doing. So usually taking these kind of bottom notes are going to help. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove these top notes for the time being. I can always undo them if I want them back later, but to be honest, I don't think they're going to help us at this point. At the moment, I'm looking to get a bass line out of this, so I just want the kind of lowest notes to kind of get an idea. So I'll delete them and then play this back. So So we've almost got it there. That one's not playing right, so I'll just quantize that. Let's play it back again. In fact, let's consolidate that by Apple J, and then loop this so we can kind of hear it. So we are kind of actually hearing the original track. We can kind of hear that this is kind of certainly this first bit is definitely sounding like the original track. So there's missing a note there somewhere, but we can easily put that back in again. It's not going to be too hard to kind of guess what that note would be. If we were to just replicate what we got in the first part there, can easily just drag this note over. So there you go. We've already kind of got that's the kind of baseline, the original notation for it. So we'll just play that back with the let's play it back with the vocal, I think. So we kind of have got like the chords that we need there. Now all we need to do is just switch it over to a patch that we like using, so a bass patch that we like using. So I'm going to go to my favorites. I've got some ones that I found from all over the place. I think some of these might be original patches from the original Massive Sound Bank. I think some of them are from various sample packs that I've downloaded, patch presets. As I say, I'm a very big fan of presets. You can get in obviously and tweak all of these if you want, to kind of change the sound of them. But I tend to use a lot of presets and just tweak them. That seems to be the easiest way for me. I like to get ideas down very quickly and get them done. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm going to switch to one of these bass presets and see how we go with that. Right, that's way too low for that, so I'm just going to move this up a register. So that is, that is quite low actually. And I'm going to put up. I might put up another octave. So we got it kind of spot on there. It's sounding quite nice. At the moment, obviously, we're just copying the original. We're copying the original bass line, the original kind of composition, but we could easily just change this around by moving some of these notes around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play it back with the beats that we got and see how it sounds. Now, obviously, it's interrupting the kick, and it's it's got way too much bass in there. So again, I'm going to jump in, put an EQ on that, and just EQ some of that real bottom end away. In fact, I'm going to take some of the top away as well. Now, obviously, this is interrupting with a kick, and of course, as one of the first things you probably learn is how to sidechain. Now, I could easily sidechain it with a compressor, just use a standard Ableton compressor and sidechain it that way. But what I tend to do is I use this fantastic plugin from Xfer called Lfo Tool, and this is I love it. I think it's brilliant. Obviously, you can do sidechain compression, which obviously adds compression to the bass. Now, but say you don't actually necessarily want that compression on the bass, you just want it to duck the kick drum. That's where this plugin is fantastic for. Now you can do all kinds of things with this. You can, it can modify and control, all aspects of the track. But the main part I go for is the sidechain part, and there's several different, straight off presets here that you can use. I tend to jump for the 6th preset, and it's got a very kind of familiar kind of waveform. So this is where it's kind of ducking in volume. So this is the lowest volume, this is the highest volume, and this is 1 bar. So this is kind of ducking a kick drum, and you can just imagine like your kick being in this part where the bass is being dropped. So there might be some tweaking we need to do to this. I'm probably gonna, it's a bit harsh taking it down to 0, so I'll take it up a bit. And also I'll adjust the end of it as well so it doesn't clip so much. If it's right at the end there, it will clip when it drops back down to 0. So I'm just going to take a bit of that end off there. So there we go. We kind of got the bass going there. But what I'm going to do is now I'm just going to play around and kind of tweak some of these notes because, well, this is just what we got straight from the MIDI file. So I kind of want to tweak these around and move these around and try to make a kind of nicer kind of rhythm out of it. So I'm just going to play around with this as we play along. So that's instantly sounding a bit better now. It's kind of grooving along a bit better. I think for the time being, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a limiter on here, actually, just kind of pump the volume up so we can get an idea of what it's going to be, when we kind of finish it. So I like to put a limiter on there, just to kind of really, pump up the volume, and we can kind of see a very quick way of seeing what it will sound like when it's got all the loudness kind of put on it. We'd obviously master it, however you wanted to master it. I'm not going to give you a lesson in mastering in this tutorial. But it's just a case of, so we can see what it sounds like when we're kind of finished. So I'm just going to put a limiter on there and just kind of increase this a bit. So we really got some kind of feeling what it will sound like when it's mastered. Kind of got something really nicely kind of going on there. I just created another version of the kick. I created like a kind of EQ'd kick. It just for ease of use, so that if I want to just drop the kick out, so we've just got some of the bottom end taken out the kick. I've just got a different layer, a duplicate layer of that, just with more EQ. So it's just like taking away the low end on a DJ mixer. So we can just kind of use that for a kind of breakdown. So there's still a kick going on there, but it's a bit lower in the mix. So it's sounding pretty good. I mean, we can also like do some more kind of interesting stuff with some of these samples as well, like this vocal sample here. I think we can do some more stuff with this. We could probably tweak it a bit more. At the moment, it's sounding very static. So what we could also do is put a kind of sidechain on it to kind of make it fit a bit more in with the track. So for just ease of use, I'm going to copy the same sidechain that we got from the bass over to the effects vocal. So there we go. That kind of makes it fit in a bit more with the track there. I mean, what we could do is actually we could put instead of doing the Lfo Tool, actually we could try putting doing proper sidechain compression, because we might want to give it a bit more kind of sucking and pushing. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up the compressor to sidechain off of that kick, and we're just going to pump this up. Maybe the Lfo Tool worked best. Good job we got undo here. Let's drop the Lfo Tool again. In fact, what I might do is add a compressor over the top of that. Just actually not duck it quite as much. And what we could also do is maybe duplicate this across and maybe play around with the transposition. So we could lower it like about maybe 3 semitones or maybe 6 semitones, just to kind of give it a bit more variation. So I'll try with 3 and see how that sounds. It's all about using these samples very creatively, just playing around with them and and seeing what you can do with them, really. There's so many controls within Ableton that allow you to do things very, very quickly, like the transposition there. That was so easy, so quick to do, and it's just a case of playing around with them and seeing how you go. So we got a really kind of good idea there for what we can do with the track. And in fact, what we can do is we can just play around with things here, just soloing them and removing them, and playing around with the different styles to see what we can do with it. So I'm just going to play around here and just see what we can kind of do with it all. So there you go. I hope that gives you a kind of good idea of kind of what you can do with a track like this. Kind of taking a track that's very fond, that you're very fond of, and just putting your own stamp on it. Bring it up to date and putting your own style in it, because that's all what it's about. You can just play your DJ sets and just play tracks as you want them. But it's it's quite easy like this. I mean, you saw this is probably taken about an hour or so to kind of put together. But you've kind of got most of the track there now. All it is just a case of sequencing it out and building it into a track. But it's just quite simple. Just load a track in, find the bits that you want from that track, and then just creatively kind of EQ them, delay them, put a bit of filter on, and you can kind of really feel, you can really kind of see, what you can do with it, and you can really kind of make it your own and bring it up to date. So hopefully that's helped you. And maybe in a future tutorial I'll take you through maybe arranging this bootleg as well. So but for now, hopefully that gives you some good ideas about how you can make your own bootlegs and do stuff creatively.